good day. So I would like to continue talking about the Spider-Verse from 1967 to 1970, and for this one we're gonna yammer a bit about the first cartoon origin of Dr. Octopus. The guy's a villainous legend, so let's do it. Alright, let's go. Alright, so we start off with Peter Parker going on a happy little peaceful drive down a mountain where he was trying to find a news scoop about some strange lights in the area, when suddenly, BAM! A rock slide covers the road and Peter's hooped. He tries to veer around this thing, man, but whoop, goes flying off the road. But luckily, he lands on top of a tree, so it's not exactly game over. He gets into his Spider-Man suit and is able to use his webbing to get back down on terra firma. So things are all good there. While he's on the ground, he notices some strange lights in a cave. You know that whole story for the Daily Bugle that he was supposed to check out. And so he does. And it looks like a little power plant or something in there. Like, it looks pretty cool. But he gets caught in a trap, man. He's in a web of chains. And the trap was set up by none other than the nefarious Dr. Octopus. He built this laboratory to harness a power that will allow him to rule the universe, which is a pretty bold statement. I'm not sure how he's gonna do it, but nonetheless, man, he sounds pretty confident, so I'm gonna believe him. He also plans to destroy a portion of New York City as a demonstration of his power. He'll use electrical impulses to penetrate the water, gas, and electrical lines, which will set off a series of shockwaves and explosions, and bam! Blow the place up real good. He even sent a letter to J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle so he can publish his warnings to the people. But JJ is like, this guy's a crockpot, man. I'm not gonna listen to him. Spider-Man, that's the real menace. Or something, eh? Peter's co-worker, Betty Brant, man, she was really worried for Peter, so she went out looking for where he was to see if he's okay, but she gets caught by Dr. Octopus as well. So Spider-Man was able to break free from one of Doc Ock's traps again, just as Doc Ock is about to set his weapon on the city, so a quick little battle ensues, but Dr. Octopus wins again. Man, this guy is resourceful, and damn it, with Spider-Man knocked out, Dr. Octopus is carrying out his plan. So he's actually successful in implementing his plan and is actually blowing up parts of the city. Damn, that's crazy. So Spider-Man escapes his trap again. He gets Betty Brant freed as well so she can go get the police. And Spider-Man goes round 3 with Dr. Octopus. And well, I guess third time's the charm because he actually wins this round for good. He got Doc Ock webbed to a post, man, and he's not moving anytime soon, which is kind of funny because earlier in the episode it's been shown that Dr. Octopus's mechanical arms are incredibly stronger than Spider-Man's webs, but now he can't break free of Spider-Man's webs. Huh. Oh well, it worked out, I guess, so hey, good for him this time, eh? So Betty gets the police and Dr. Octopus is arrested, so it's all good there. Peter shows up in his street clothes and is like, oh, what the heck happened here? Golly gee, tee you know? But he's reunited with Betty, so she's happy that he's safe and all that, and it's all good. And with that, that is the end of this amazing, spectacular tale. Oh yeah, what an episode, eh? This is the cartoon that got me to love superheroes. But even then, man, in its own right, the story for this episode is actually really awesome. For a lot of cartoons from this era, a lot of times, man, the story doesn't make sense. They'll just have things happen for the sake of happening, even if it's logical or not. But for this episode, like, everything happens for a reason, and if something kind of weird happens, there's an explanation of why it happens. Like at the end of the episode, Betty Brant went to go get the police, right? This is a really remote area that they're in, so the police shouldn't be around there. But we've seen earlier in the episode that she did run into the cops because they were looking for something already, right? So it makes sense. And Dr. Octopus was like flippin' amazing in this one too. So if you go back and read the old comic books, especially when Dr. Octopus's first appearances, man, this guy is a dangerous character. He's so incredibly strong, he can beat up Spider-Man with no problem. In fact, beat Spider-Man up so bad that Peter Parker basically gave up being Spider-Man for half an issue. And he has such an incredible intellect that he's even dangerous in that regard too. So everything about how dangerous and powerful this character is has been translated incredibly well into this cartoon. Like, he defeated Spider-Man 3 times in this episode and only lost once, so really, he's up 3-1. And his plan to destroy the city is, actually pretty grounded, right? You don't need some giant, atomic laser beam from on top of a mountain blowing up a city. You don't need some magnetic satellite to, pull down an asteroid and crash into the planet or anything really elaborate, right? Like, his plan is pretty simple. Blowing up gas lines, like, that's incredibly dangerous. Blowing up the water lines, that's gonna cause a lot of damage. It's actually a pretty feasible plan. And the fact that he actually has some success with his plan and that Spider-Man is struggling to keep up with this guy, on one hand shows you how dangerous Dr. Octopus is, and on the other hand shows you how inexperienced and how determined Spider-Man is, so you want to root for him even more. And that's the hero's journey, right? No matter how many times you get beaten up, you get back up and you continue fighting, right? That's one of the enduring things about Spider-Man, and what makes him so great is that he has all these failures and he has these limitations, but he keeps on overcoming them. So, what a guy. And all of that is wrapped up really neatly in this episode, so it's great to see. It's a beautiful introduction to the entire Spider-Man series. And as I say about this series, man, the soundtrack is second to none. I swear to God, it is some of the best music out there, man. But yeah, there's some more things to yammer on about Spidey and Doc Ock and all that kind of stuff, so let's get into that stuff over here. Yeah. So I have a bit more of Spider-Man's comic book origin and his comic book prehistory on my first Spider-Man 1967 cartoon episode, which is linked above here. So if you want to check that out, it's pretty good. Whereas for this one, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about Dr. Octopus. So if we go back to the beginning, man, Dr. Octopus first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man #3 in 1963. And that comic featured Doc Ock's origin, how Otto Octavius was working in a lab, there was an accident, his mechanical arms were fused to his body, and he went quite mad after that, And this featured episode is kind of loosely based on that issue, but, not quite. The basics of it are the same, I guess. The similarities would be Dr. Octopus is much stronger than Spider-Man and can defeat him somewhat easily, but Spider-Man perseveres. In the comic, Doc Ock wanted to destroy part of the planet and rebuild it in his own image, where he would eventually take control of the world in that similar fashion. Whereas in the episode, he wanted to destroy parts of New York City to demonstrate his power and eventually use that to control the universe, which, is a bit of a jump. Also, in the comic, Doc Ock took control of an atomic research center to fulfill his plans, whereas in the cartoon, he built his own base, in the caves in that random mountain there. Also in the comic, because Spider-Man's webs weren't strong enough for Doc Ock's mechanical arms, Spider-Man had to chemically fuse Doc Ock's arms together before knocking him out. Whereas in the cartoon, like I say, his webs failed to contain Dr. Octopus, but then they suddenly worked when he needed them to, without any changing of the web cartridges or anything like that. That would be the explanation, maybe, but yeah. And of course you had the old classic web in the eyeball trick, so it's all good around. So for most of the early Spider-Man realm, a lot of the characters, including Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus, were created by writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko. And for Steve Ditko, man, that's, pretty awesome that he's able to kind of bring all these characters to life. They are quite memorable, and it's good for us fans as well, right? Because, a lot of the Spider-Man's legendary characters were designed from Steve, so he definitely knew how to capture the reader's eyes, with his art. Steve Ditko did also help create the look of other characters in this episode, such as J. Jonah Jameson, where the J stands for John, and Betty Brant. So J. Jonah Jameson first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man #1, and Betty Brant first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man #4. Good stuffs. But there was a bit of a shift in Spider-Man comics as the partnership between Stan Lee and Steve Ditko were getting a bit shaky, to the point where Steve Ditko's last issue was Amazing Spider-Man #38. So things kind of worked out pretty good in the end. Stan Lee, like a lot of people, knew of this really amazing artist, John Romita, who worked at DC Comics, and Stan brought him over to Marvel to work on Daredevil. But with Steve Ditko leaving Spider-Man, Stan Lee got John Romita to take over the Amazing Spider-Man title, which he did, starting with issue number 39. like, John really didn't want to leave the Daredevil series. Like, he was really happy working there, and he's like, wow, Spider-Man, that's a bit too much of the spotlight, you know, I'm kind of happy in my corner here, you know, but being a pretty awesome guy, he's like, well, you know, if Stan Lee asked me to be on Spider-Man, I guess I'll do that. And that's where his legend just expanded. So good was his work in that title that his art style was the basis for the look and all the art in this Spider-Man cartoon series. Basically just a copy of a paste of his art, really, you know, onto cartoon cells and animated. So things worked out pretty good there. So for this Spider-Man series, each episode was actually broken up into 2 separate stories. So for this one, the first story was the featured episode here featuring Dr. Octopus. The second story in this episode was called Sub-Zero for Spidey, where Spider-Man faces off against giant icemen from Pluto. Kinda quite the departure, you know, from fighting supervillains, but you never know what you're gonna get in New York in 60s in Marvel, I guess. So as awesome as all these characters are in this featured episode, they would finally all meet together in live action in the classic and superbly amazing movie Spider-Man 2, which did heavily feature Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus, but also had J. Jonah Jameson and a quick cameo from Betty Brant. So things were pretty awesome there, and really like one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. So this featured episode was like a little hors d'oeuvre for that movie, I guess. But yeah, that's all I got there for now. So with this, that, those, and all those other things, I guess that's that. Right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, you know, feel free to do so. Or anything else, you know, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, you know, have a great day. Thanks.